Let's now see how work with application control rules looks in practice. We'll switch to a test Windows 7 operating system. Like for all administrative operations, we'll be using an MMC, a Microsoft Management Console. We'll need a snap-in for group policies. We'll use now local group policies, but the policies usually are created at a higher level. For example, for all computers of a specified type, or for all computers that belong to a given group of users. Follow Computer Configuration, Windows Settings, Secure Settings to find Software Restriction Policies and Application Control Policies. Both mechanisms are available. We'll run a brief demonstration that will show you how easy it is to control programs run by users using software restriction policies. The first thing to do is to create a new software restriction policy. One click produces several results. Above all, we have now access to default security level configuration. The default level is unrestricted. This level specifies that all users may run all programs. We mentioned before that this level is not the default level that you would like to use in a real environment. It'd be preferable to use a disallowed level, which means that users are not allowed to run anything except for allowed programs. There's also an intermediate security level, Basic User, which applies to users but not to administrators. It's a default level that was designed to convince administrators that this mechanism is really efficient. For this demonstration, we'll leave the unrestricted security level and block a specific program that we don't want users to run. To do this, go to Additional Rules. As you can see, there are two rules already. Path rules that indicate system components. They're at the unrestricted security level. This means that programs that registered in these locations are always allowed to be run. This doesn't apply to the entire system. Key system components, however, are exempted in this way. We'll add a new rule. Because we're thinking of a specific program, a specific version of a program, let's choose a rule that is as specific as possible. A file hash rule. A certificate rule might be similarly efficient, but if it's uncertain if a program is signed digitally, we shouldn't use it. If the program is not digitally signed, a certificate rule is not going to work. Since the rule we'll create will be an exception from a default security level, it should be a disallowed exception. We want to block all attempts to run the program. Next, you need to identify the program. To select it, you need to possess a copy. An administrator must have access rights to a program that is to be blocked. This could pose some problems at times, since this means that a local computer has to have installed programs that are used by all users. In this case, we have a copy of such a program. From now on, the indicated file will not run. It's been placed in the disallowed mode. The program is now disallowed. Unfortunately, to exempt another program, you need to repeat this procedure. There's no generalization available. Let's now enforce the implementation of the rules in this local computer. To do this, run a command line interface with additional administrative privileges. Update a security policy. Computer security policies are checked at system startup. Policies that relate to users are checked at logon. Additional checks are performed in about 15-minute intervals. As you can see below, the policies have been successfully updated. Let's now try to run a program that has been blocked on this computer. The prompted message does not stem from an access rights issue. We have the access rights to run the file. This, however, goes against the updated policies. Our permissions are irrelevant. We'll remove the created rule examples and explore the other control technology, application control policies. This feature is often referred to simply as App Blocker. Let's start with No Rules Set. You can import a security policy prepared on another computer or create default rules. Default rules are the 3 rules that we've mentioned in the theoretical part of this module. The first rule allows everyone to run applications installed in the Program Files folder. The second rule allows the system to operate, while the third allows administrators to run all applications and files. Whether or not you consider the rules necessary is immaterial. Note that AppBlocker's default operation employs a concept that was mentioned earlier. You can create exceptions for specific applications that are allowed to run and not exceptions for applications that are to be blocked. The latter concept was implemented in software restriction policies. Take a look at the AppBlocker rule wizard. You need to indicate an application and specify if an action for a rule is to allow or deny running the application. You also need to select what users the rule will apply to. In our case, the rule will apply to all users. Next, you can specify how a program to which the rule will apply will be identified. We'll select the publisher condition. Let's see how this rule will work for Internet Explorer. We'll create a rule that applies to Internet Explorer 9. This application is a part of the Windows operating system. The publisher is Microsoft Corporation. You can change the scope of the rule, though. You can apply the rule to the 9th version and all newer versions. In this way, you declare that you don't trust earlier versions of Internet Explorer. You can also apply the rule to all versions of the application. Move the slider up to make the rules less specific and reduce the scope to file name. By moving the slider, you can block all Windows system components or all files that are digitally signed by Microsoft. As you can see, rule generalization is quite easy in this solution. This is an advance over the previous control technology. Additionally, you can also create rule exceptions. We won't create any exceptions. The rule we created blocks all digitally signed files published by Microsoft. The last feature we'll show is generating a set of rules for applications located in a specific folder that are known to be trustworthy. We'll automatically generate rules. The generated rules will apply to the sysinternal suite user folder. Several programs are contained in the folder. We won't create a rule for each of them. We'll indicate what rules are to be created. If we're lucky and it turns out that the folder contains digitally signed files, we can create a publisher rule. This would be the best option. You can also select to always create file hash rules. There can be many such rules. You can generalize them using the method just shown, which will automatically reduce their number. Analysis of the folder is completed. It turns out that the total number of rules is 56 publisher rules and 1 file hash rule. When you select a hash rule list, you can see that it's a generalized file hash rule. It applies to multiple files. A single rule relates to all non-signed files that can be run. We have successfully generated a set of rules, exceptions that allow some operations to be performed. Earlier in the presentations, we blocked the ability to install applications that we correctly did not consider to be necessary as standard components used in our network. Now we'll work with a type of rules called Windows Installer Rules. Remember that MSI files are used for installation. Let's try to create a new rule. Pay attention to the fact that you can create default rules for all types. Now we also could create default rules. This would allow users to install digitally signed files or files that are located in the installer folder. Administrators would be able to install anything. Assume that the first two rules don't meet our requirements. Because of this, we'll remove them. Now, only administrators can install files. We'll create a new rule now. We'll explicitly deny installing programs that were also blocked from installing in the previous example. Like before, this will be a file hash rule. You need to specify a file or a folder that contains more than one file. You should provide a name for the rule. It's also good to describe it. However, we won't do this in the presentation. We have successfully created a rule that explicitly denies anyone, including administrators, the right to run a specified installation file. You'll have to start the previously mentioned service and potentially reboot the computer to put this rule into effect. The service application identity is designed to identify software. It's stopped at the moment. We'll switch the service into automatic startup mode and start it. After applying these rules and a reboot, we can be sure that the defined policy really works in a local computer or a computer group if the rules pertain to more than one machine.